I wanted to take this opportunity to go over a few special effects that can be used in Photoshop on your Surrealism project. So first of all, to create a composite image, meaning an image like this where there's multiple photographs combined into one, you have to start with a plan. So start with an idea of what you want, and then you take pictures based on that idea, or you can take pictures of several different parts, whether it be like parts of the body like hands or ears or eyes, and then maybe parts of nature like leaves and trees versus like geometric things that are man-made like windows or doors, and then decide how you want to put them together after you see what you have. So I did a robot photo shoot, and I'm going to show you how to create a composite image that's kind of surreal, involving maybe like an army of robots. So this one robot is going to be repeated in multiple places in multiple ways, and then I will use this as an opportunity to show you a lot of different special effects that may or may not make my photo better, but will hopefully give you some ideas about the types of things you can do on your own work. So I'm going to go ahead and start by creating a new document on one of like a background layer. So I'm going to think about what photograph I can use to start with in order to create this effect. Let's see. So this one's kind of cluttered, and that's kind of what I'm going for because it's a trash heap. So let's see which image would be good to use. Okay, so I have my background image. It'll first of all allow me to, when it opens, it'll allow me to make some changes using the camera raw filter. So I can, for example, get my highlights back. I can increase the contrast if that's something I want to do, maybe increase the saturation a little bit because this trash pile has a lot of great colors that I'm going to be using. And then whenever I'm ready, I just click open. Open that document, and then I'm going to start, always start by making a copy of your background layer. So just click and drag it down to the little copy layer button, which is the plus sign at the bottom, and then I even like hide the background so that it doesn't distract me. It's just there as a backup in case I mess up this background copy. So the first thing I might do is maybe get rid of the background because I know I want to have like more trash in the background, as if this is like piled up however tall. We don't really know, it just goes off into infinity. So I'm going to use one of the selection tools in order to select that white backdrop. Now since it's all one color, I'm going to grab the magic wand tool, which is hidden underneath the quick selection tool. And I'm going to make sure it says 10 for the tolerance so that there's about 10 pixels on either side of that color that I select, which in this case happens to be white. So I'm just going to click, and then it should do a pretty good job of selecting. I notice that there's some extra stray marching ants in other places where I don't want them. So I'm just going to use my basic lasso tool, which allows me to make a freeform selection. And then I'm going to choose the add to selection option up here because I want wherever I drag and draw a shape, I want that to be added to the selection. Actually, in this case, the sky is my selection, so I want to subtract it from the selection. So you have to think about what you're trying to do. So I'm going to get rid of this part by just dragging around it. And then up here, maybe I want to get rid of some of these parts too, because that's all part of the trash pile. Okay, so now I can just go ahead and hit delete. And then you can see that I have nothing in the background. The checkerboard indicates that it is a transparent. There's nothing on that layer. So I'm going to extend this down a little bit because I really want to have more figures in the foreground, I think. So I need more ground. So in order to create space at like the bottom or on either side of your document, I'm going to select the crop tool, and now I can add space. So I can go down however far, so right about to there. That looks like enough foreground to be able to put a couple of robots in there. So the next step, in order to fill that in an intelligent way, so Photoshop will do it for me, is if I grab this rectangular marquee tool, then I can select that area pretty easily, and I'm making sure to overlap it slightly so I have the gray in my selection. So it's just going to continue that down. So Photoshop tries to intelligently, it has certain tools that can intelligently know what you're trying to do, it can fill it in with AI. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit, making sure I'm on the right layer, which is background copy, fill, and then I'm going to choose Content Aware, and then click OK. So now Photoshop will do its thing, it'll think about it, and it'll try and fill it with what it thinks should be there, which is the ground. And sometimes it does a pretty good job of this, other times it grabs things that shouldn't belong, so we can see what it does, and then go from there. So it did a pretty good job. It maybe repeated a little bit of the yellow there, but if I do Command D to deselect, I can see some of this looks a little bit manufactured, so like a little bit too patterny. So I might grab one of my correction tools, which in this case is the spot heal brush. And notice how it's like a tiny little cursor. You can hit the right bracket keys to make it bigger, or the left bracket keys make it smaller. So now this way I can just kind of click, and then it will do its thing. So I'm just getting rid of some of those areas that look like a pattern. Now I don't have to be super exact because I'm going to probably put a robot over the top of this anyway. But you can see I have my little plant down here. If I want to get rid of it, I can just do that. Command Z didn't do a very good job. So I'm going to keep that there for now. The theme of my robot photo shoot was kind of like WALL-E, how he's trying to save the planet, and Evie was, you know, found that plant, and that was the whole plot of the movie, was trying to save this little plant. So that's the theme of my photo shoot, was environmentalism. Okay, so now if you want to place a photograph inside here, let's go ahead and address the background. So say you want a different sky, you can place another photograph behind this layer that we've just created with the background that's been deleted. So whatever layer I put underneath that will show through. So I'm going to go ahead and find a layer where it looks like there's some more trash all the way to the top of the page. So let's go to File, Place Embedded. So this is the choice you make if you want to put a photograph into this document on a separate layer. So File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to find one that goes all the way to the top of the frames. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and place. So I have one robot so far in this picture. Now here's a second one. I don't want her on that background, so I'm going to use my Content Aware Fill again. Again, here's our Camera Raw filter if you want to. Here's our Camera Raw filter if you want to adjust anything like the clarity. Maybe we bring up the clarity a little bit, lower those highlights. And this saves with the document. So if you decide not to use this and just like click OK, it saves that those changes with that document. But I'm going to click OK and place it. And now it's a smart object. This means that the pixels are not directly editable. So if I want to delete anything, say, or do the Content Aware Fill, I'm going to have to rasterize this layer. So I'm just going to bring this up to the top. So maybe make it a little bigger so that it fits. There we go. Now this has a hard edge, so obviously it does not blend very well. I'm going to try dragging it down in my layers so that it will appear on a lower layer, so you can kind of see what that does. Now obviously she is too big in the background. I'm going to hide my background copy for a second. Zoom in on this. And then Photoshop has some tools that make selections really easy. So you could either use the Quick Selection tool, which allows you to click and drag and like add to your selection based on where you drag, kind of like you're painting your selection with a paintbrush. Now, as you can see, it doesn't do a perfect job, so you may have to like, whoops, subtract this from the selection, see where it's blue. I've subtracted more than just her outline. So I can hold down the Option key and then get rid of that part. So this can be a very powerful selection tool that gives you a lot of customizable options. Or I'm going to Command D to deselect. I can come up here to the top on the options bar for this tool and select subject as one of the options. So usually Photoshop does a pretty good job depending on how simple the background is. This background's really complicated, but it does an okay job. So it's kind of found where my object is in that picture, which can be really helpful when you're trying to get something from one picture and put it in another without copying the background. Okay, so I might even use my Lasso tool at this point to kind of hand draw where I want to add my selection. I know I want her arm back in there, so I might just draw it. This is not the easiest tool to use. There we go, something like that. Okay, so I'm just trying to maybe copy and paste her onto a new layer. So I don't need the selection to be perfect because she's going to be overlapping trash, and where there's trash, it's going to look a little bit cluttered. But I want to kind of get most of her body. There we go. That's good enough for now. So if you want to check your selection to see how it's going to look, you can go up to Select and Mask. And now under here we can see, oh, I've missed some parts, you know, it's not perfect. If you want to get like the fine details on her hair, for example, that's more of a advanced selection. You can come over where it says Edge Detection, turn on Smart Radius, and then just drag the radius up a little bit. And now this is probably not going to work because her hair is against like the same color background. But if you just drag, it should try and find that edge, with like find all the little flyaway hairs and that kind of thing. Okay, that looks a little bit better. So it's sort of a advanced selection process. You can also feather the edge. I find that really helpful at this stage. And then if you want to shift the edge out at all, works like this, so then you have more selected than just her. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, that's the selection I want. I'm going to copy and paste her onto her own layer, and then I'm going to get rid of her from this layer. So I'm going to go Edit, Copy, so then I can move her wherever I want, because I do like this pose. Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste, or Command-C, Command-V. And there she is on layer 1. I might even, since she's my second robot, I might call her 2. So I can kind of keep track of which robot is where. Now, I liked that selection, so I'm going to click on this layer again, right-click, and then go to Select Pixels. Now, this will allow me to get that selection again, because that's the only thing on that layer. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this layer. I always like to turn the eyeball on and off just to make sure it's the right layer. So I'm going to turn off her from number 2, and then in this layer here, I need to adjust this mask again. Selected mask, let's feather it even more, and let's shift the edge out even more so that I have more of her. She's all the way in there. Okay, so now I'm going to click OK, and now I'm going to attempt to fill her with the content aware fill, and this is going to use the background to inspire Photoshop and how to fill this area because it's rather complicated in the background. So we'll see how well it goes. We're going to go Edit, Fill. Oh, first of all, we can't fill until we rasterize this layer. It's a smart object, which means it's protected. This little icon down here indicates that. So I'm going to right-click, rasterize, so now it's made out of pixels. So now I can edit those pixels by going to Edit, Fill, and then choosing Content Aware. I've done this several times. I do it a lot. It's very helpful when you're trying to separate something from its background and then move it around to somewhere else, because I needed the background to be bigger without her being too big. And the background things you tend to be a little bit smaller. So we're going to play with perspective in this piece as well. So the idea of surrealism is to make something that does not look possible in the real world. So in this case, multiples of her would be impossible. Or if you had something that was breaking the laws of physics, something like that. So it did a pretty good job. So it kind of borrowed, I don't even know where it got this thing from. I guess if we zoom out, we could probably find it. It's like, where's Waldo? You can still kind of see her outline, but it's much better. It's much harder to see where she was. So now if I turn her back on, notice I can take this move tool and I can move her wherever I want. She's not just like stuck in one place. So let's go ahead, and she's also not stuck as one size. So I'm just going to turn on the rest of my layers here. Zoom out a little bit. It looks like she's in a slightly different lighting than our other one, so we could play with that if we want. But now it looks like this trash heap is even bigger. The nice thing is here I can make her smaller, so Command-T, and make her fit the context so she's kind of the same size as her sister robot here. Maybe she's up at the top. Crouching robot. Yeah, there we go. And we can move her from there if we want to. Let's get another robot and put one in the foreground here. I wanted to do something where I'm like peeling back the skin and you can see like computer parts. So let's get a close-up robot. And I'm going to click on the top layer here. Go to File, Place Embedded again. I'm going to keep using that in order to place each robot. Let's see. I really like, I think it's in my desktop demo folder. I like this one. So this is kind of a cool pose. She's got like a robot hand and a regular hand. I don't think it needs any adjustments right now with the camera raw filter, so I'm just going to apply it. And then it says it's a smart object, so I'm going to have to probably take that off. But this, I don't have a lot of choices of where to put it because she just kind of abruptly starts from the bottom of the frame. So I'm going to have to put her on the bottom of the frame. So she's like in the foreground, like that. And then I'm going to see how well Photoshop will select her. So again, quick selection, select subject. Let's see what Photoshop does, because I don't want the background from this one. I just want her and her arms. Still thinking, still thinking. There we go, it did a pretty good job. So now you'll see if I add a mask, so down here in the lower right hand corner of the layers panel where it's like a little white rectangle with the black circle in the middle, this is the mask. So this allows you to hide everything outside this selection, outside those marching ants. And if we zoom in, we can see just how smart that selection was. Like look at all these little pieces of her hair that was separated out, so it did a really good job. So I like that tool a lot. Okay, so I'm going to put her at the bottom. And then I really want to create like an opening in her cheek to make that where the circuit board is, so that we know that she's a robot. So there's lots of ways to do this. I'm just going to show you kind of a basic way to cut like a hole in one thing so that another thing shows through. So I'm just going to make sure I'm on the right layer, turning it off and turning it back on. Notice I have a mask on this one, so I'm going to stay on that mask. And with my lasso tool, I'm just going to like draw where that, maybe she's been injured, you know, and her skin is peeled off. So I'm just going to draw an organic shape, you know, kind of tracing her cheekbone. Maybe it kind of comes in a little bit. Maybe it has like some skin. Whoops. Then maybe I can add to the selection. Whatever happened here. It's getting very complicated. There we go, something like that. Okay, so I can check my edge with select and mask. And I might want to have a little bit of a feather option. Not much. Just a little bit. Okay. So now, in order to hide those pixels without being destructive, so I don't want to delete them completely because I might decide later that I want to like put an overlay on it or something like that, I'm just going to add to this mask. So this mask, again, is editable. Anywhere that I add black is going to hide, and anywhere that I add white is going to reveal. So I could always push and pull with those values later. But right now I'm just going to add black to this area. So to fill, you'd go Edit Fill, or Option Delete is the keyboard shortcut for that. Edit Fill, and then choose Foreground Color under Contents, which happens to be black. Okay, so I'm seeing the trash behind her. I don't want to see trash, I want to see like a circuit board. So, oh, and I can show you how on this mask I can use a brush and then maybe make it smaller with the left bracket key, maybe add to that mask. So I'm kind of making it like a wound here. I can add to it, or I can switch this with white and I can subtract from the mask and get my skin back. Yeah, something like that looks nice and sort of a grotesque looking shape there. Okay, another thing I can do is just add a blank layer. So if you click this little plus sign down here, it's going to be an empty layer. And I'm going to paint on that with a lower opacity to create like a drop shadow. So with black selected, I'm going to get the brush tool and lower this down to like, 24%, something like that, 20%. Sure. And then I'm just going to paint along the inside top edges. So like right there, right here, anywhere that the skin would be like hanging down over our computer parts. There we go. And then underneath that, I'm going to add my computer chip. So File, Place Embedded. And then let's see which one has the computer parts. They're all so tiny. I think it's under downloads. Whoops. Well, now. I thought I was organized. Here it is. Found it. Okay, so I'm placing my computer chip into my document. I've already adjusted the levels. And I want it underneath her skin. So I can move this around with the move tool until I have the circuits overlapping. So this could be a creative way to so you can already kind of see where those circuits are. I can make it smaller so that I have more circuits showing. Hold shift to constrain the proportions. All right, and then what part looks really interesting? Let's get maybe, I'm on the wrong tool. There we go. Let's see. Ooh, maybe like that. That looks pretty circuity. There we go. So she looks more robotic already. Now obviously we have a background that we don't want, so you can use this lasso tool again to make a basic selection. Say, I want this part right here. And then to hide everything else, you just, make sure you're on the right layer first of all. Not that layer, this layer. Okay, so then you click on the mask button and voila, it's hidden the mask. So now she's looking more like a cyborg. You could even make her eyes glow. That would be kind of cool. So if we added like laser looking eyes, we could click on our top layer, maybe add a blank layer, get a color. I always like to do this on blank layers in case I don't like it. I can always take it off, or I can add extra special effects like blending modes and layer styles and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to make her eyes red because, I don't know, that seems very robot-y to me. So grabbing my brush tool, I am just going to click and add this red, like cyborg looking eye. Now I want it to look a little bit more realistic than that. I don't know, if I zoom out, it looks kind of okay. She has more of like a robot feel to her. But if I want it to be blended in more with the pupil, so I'm going to double click on the layer and name it. So those are the eyes. And then I might change the blending mode. So right here where it says normal, this is really important. This will affect how each layer shows through the layers below it, or the layers above it. So if I click on normal and change it to darken, notice it's blending with all the layers below it. So it's darkening where it's darker, where it overlaps. Where the light areas overlap is the next category down. This next category creates contrast, like overlay a lot. I think that looks super spooky. And then these create like the opposite color. Ooh, that's kind of pretty too. So I'm going to go with overlay. So now she looks a little bit more like a robot there. Okay, you can also add layer styles like where it says FX down here. You can add a drop shadow, you can add an outer glow. I might do this for this case to make her eyes look like they're glowing. So you can see, you can pick your color. Maybe since it's red light, I want it to look like red light is coming off of her pupils. There we go. And then you can affect the opacity right here. So it's just like an outer glow, like your object is glowing, whatever it is. And then here's the size, the spread. That looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, so now her eyes are glowing red, so light is coming out of her eyes. So that looks a little bit more convincing that she's a robot. Activated to save the world. Okay, now if I want these two layers to move together, because watch what happens if I move her, her computer chip doesn't come with her, I can link them. So if this layer is important too, that's the drop shadow. So I'm going to hold shift, add the drop shadow, and what layer is this? This is the computer chip. Hold shift and add the computer chip. Now all three of those layers are selected. If I click on this folder, this group button, they will group together into group 1. I'm going to call this 3 because this is robot number 3. So now I know what's in there, and now when I grab them, they're automatically grouped together. Oops, I missed the eyes. So the eyes need to also be in that group. So I'm just going to drag and drop them into that folder, and now they do move together. Okay, so we can maybe put her down here. There we go. Okay, next up, so we got blending modes. Adding a gradient mask. So I have a picture of my robot laying down as if she's been deactivated, and I want the trash to kind of blend with what's above it. So this kind of simulates an effect that you might do in the darkroom with a blending mask, like an enlarger blend. Only this is with the Photoshop tools. So I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, find her laying down pose. The trouble is I save these in 2 separate folders, so I'm having trouble remembering which is which. I think this one is her laying down. Okay, so here she is. She's been defeated. This one doesn't have her foot in it, so I have to like put it off to the side. Just going to click OK. And before I place it, I'm going to try and blend out this edge. So you notice the edges are really obvious. So what I want to do is add a mask first on this layer. So the mask is white, which means nothing's hidden right now, everything's revealed. So I'm going to add a gradient that fades from black to white, which means from hidden to revealed. So I'm going to try and just reveal the robot here in the middle. So on this mask, I'm going to grab the gradient, make sure it goes from black to white, like so. And then I'm just going to see which direction it goes. So I'm going to drag from here to there. That's kind of what I want. See how it disappeared at the top? So now the only thing you can see really is this robot. And here in the mask you can see it fading from black to white, from hidden to revealed. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom, kind of drag up. There we go. So now it should blend with the ground a little bit more. And I'm just going to place her down here. It still looks a little bit like there's a harsh edge right here. So I'm just going to click on this mask and then edit that mask using my brush tool with black selected. Now I have to hit the right bracket tool to make my brush bigger. I can also adjust the size up here under the brush preset picker. And I'm just going to paint with black. Now my opacity is turned way down, so if I wanted to take more of an effect, I would just turn that way up. So now every time I click and drag, it's going to paint. I might even turn it all the way up and get some of these areas. Get rid of some of that trash on the ground. And get rid of some of this trash above her. so it looks a little bit more convincing. There, something like that. Okay, so that's robot number 4. And then again, you can always turn it off and turn it back on to see what you have. And this one's going to be robot number 4. Okay, so that's the gradient mask. Already looked at selecting and masking. So the clone stamp is if I have an area in one place and I want to recreate that in another place. So if I, for example, want to expand this, I want to have my picture plane be a little bit bigger, I can go to the crop tool, expand maybe this left edge here to make it more of a standard size. And then I can fill this area with trash that is already a part of my composition. Okay, so as you can see, I need something over here. So I can grab my clone stamp, and this is a way that you can copy from pixels from one part of the image into another. So I'm going to find my background, copy, which is right here. I'm just going to click on it, and then I want to hold down the Option key to place my point. So I'm going to start painting with these pixels right here. So I'm going to go over here. The size of your brush is up to you. And I'm just going to click and paint. And notice it paints all the way up until I get to that edge. And it's using the pixels from my source pixels to paint with. So it's going to be a little bit like a pattern. So I'm clicking with my Option button held down. And then I'm just going to paint, fill this in. And it's behind this robot right here. All right, and there's this big tarp thing. So far, so good. Now, if I want to borrow some of these clothes and trash, I have to go to that layer. So that layer is right here. So I'm going to click on this layer, hold down Option, select, and then paint with some of these over here off to the side. And it's not a perfect fix because there might be some ways that we can see the repetition, but it does a pretty good job of filling that in. So the clone stamp is a correction tool. The spot heal brush is a correction tool for fixing things like these little, oh, that's on the wrong layer. So you have to be on the right layer for something to work. So the spot heal brush tool will correct things like these little divots in the ground. It'll intelligently use the pixels around that area to guess what should be there. Okay. Now I might even fill this in with different trash so that I don't have too much of a cookie cutter effect. If I want this to extend over, I might be able to, on that layer, get my rectangular marquee tool, make a rectangle selection. Oops, let go too early. I want it right here. And then go up to Edit Fill, Content Aware. So it's getting very, very busy. But hopefully it'll continue the ground across. Nice. And then we can always paint with the trash. I'm going to hide our robot for a second. And then I might just paint with my clone stamp, hold Option, click, and then just kind of fill this in. There we go. We can have some repeats because we have this robot covering it. All right, so there we go. We might just fill this in, like I said, with some other pictures underneath. But let's go get another robot and try some other special effects. Okay, so that's the clone stamp. Content aware fill. Okay, we're going to change the color of one of these robots. So now I'm going to choose File, Place Embedded. Let's use this robot here. She's holding the plant up very proudly. And I'm just going to click OK. The lighting is going to be a little different on all of these robots, but that's okay. It's a composite image, so we'll just do the best we can. Okay. Hit Enter. I'm going to select her. I'll try the shortcut of select subject first, and then depending on how good of a job Photoshop does, I will adjust that selection. And then we're going to change her color. Okay, so we got some issues here. We're going to zoom in. And I might need my lasso tool. Sometimes I think it's easiest just to draw the selection for myself. And she's a robot, so it does not need to be perfect. Actually, robots would kind of be perfect, wouldn't they? Okay, so here is her outline, basically. Whoop. Okay, so I'm going to have her standing on top of this pile of trash. Something like that. Okay, add to selection. Alter my selection here. And we can see, select a mask, we can see a preview of that selection. Obviously we've missed a couple parts, but for our demonstration purposes here, that is just fine. So I'm going to go ahead, hide the background, and now we have to decide where to place her. I kind of want her towards the top maybe. Well, top's a little bit cluttered, so maybe towards the bottom. So we have this lady laying down. Yeah, let's put her up here on this platform. Her shoes are gone, so I don't know what she's standing on. We could also put her down here, so her feet are kind of like hiding behind our robot in the foreground. Oops, I put her in that group. Don't want to do that. I want her below the group. There we go. So her feet are kind of hidden. Alright, so say we want to change the color of this robot here. Our robot number 5. So there's different ways that you can do this. You can first of all use an adjustment layer. So up here where it says adjustments, in fact let me move my video. So up here where it says adjustments, I can choose Hue Saturation. Now notice when you move your adjustment layer, it affects everything underneath of it. Obviously that's not what we want. So if you click on this little clip to button at the bottom, it's going to clip it to the layer just below it. So we can make her purple, we can make her red, we can make her whatever. Let's see, if you wanted to change just one part of her, so say we just want to change like the area that is this color purple, I can change it from master to anything else and then use this eyedropper to select that color. So say I want to just change this purple color. So notice it selected that in the spectrum. So now when I drag this hue, it doesn't change her face. Now it only changes the areas on her that are that hue of purple. So that can be helpful for changing colors. Another thing I can do if I want all of her to be red is I can get rid of this hue saturation layer. I can select the pixels that are on that layer, so they're preserved right here in this mask. So if I right click and I choose add mask to selection, I can get those pixels back selected. And then I'm just going to add a blank layer and fill it with a color. So say I want her to be red. This one is like the evil version of the robot army or whatever. So I'm going to option delete, fill it with red. Obviously that doesn't look very realistic. So now we can add one of those blending modes that we looked at earlier. So the blending mode right here where it says normal Again, you can darken where they overlap. You can create a lighter color. I kind of liked one of these I saw earlier. Ooh, this color burn looks kind of cool. And then if it's a little too intense, you can always turn down the opacity, make it more see-through, but that almost looks like it's in a different type of lighting or something. So that's another way to add color, is just making a basic color layer and then changing the blending mode on that. You can also, so if I delete, well, let's just hide it in case I like that one. So you can also click on your picture here. Got to make sure it's rasterized. So notice how it has the little smart object that shows that it's a protected layer. So I'm going to right click, choose rasterize layer, and now I can actually paint those pixels with either a lower opacity brush, or I can use the color replacement tool. So if I go to the brush and hold it down, one of those hidden tools, I can click on it, come on, there we go, is the color replacement tool. So now with red selected as my brush, and I can hit the right bracket key to make my brush bigger, I can just paint, and wherever she is, it will make the lights a light red and the darks a dark red and everything in between. So that's the color replacement brush. So that's another way that you can change the color of something. But I'm going to undo that because that's destructive and just add this, turn this layer on so it looks a little bit more convincing. Okay, so that's changing the color. We looked at how to refine the edge with feathering, adding adjustment layers like hue saturation, color, balance would be good for like matching someone's head onto someone else's body, adjusting the cyan versus red and magenta. Some other adjustment layers that you might want to play with would be like these special effects down here, like invert would invert the colors. So let's see if we click on like this girl up here. That's robot number 2. You can invert the colors. So it's doing the whole layer. Actually, it's doing everything below it. So if you just clip it to that one layer, it'll just affect the girl, the robot. You can add blending modes if you want to. Ooh, she looks super sinister there. Ooh, these are kind of cool. Ooh, there she looks kind of like a ghost. Sort of like that one. Okay. And then there's also Posterize and some Threshold, some other like clever ones that you can try. Gradient maps are fun. So if I had her selected right here, I can add a gradient map on like under special effects. So like let's do some special effects. So if I click on my robot, the red layer here, I can add under FX, I can add that outer glow again, or maybe a drop shadow. And then it kind of looks like she's glowing. So you can adjust that to make it more opaque. There we go. Got some hidden powers there. Let's see. You can also lower the opacity, make them look like a ghost. Some more adjustment layers. Yeah, so if you want to add like a color to her, let's add one more robot here. That's a lot, you know, for one day. File, place embedded. So let's add this girl right here. Well, nope, let's do this one. I like this pose. It's kind of fun. We can put her on this level right here. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is number 6. Or we could put her at the top. Okay, so just going to show you, I would select her and get her like on her own layer. I do like this little plant down here though. We could put that in the foreground. Now under effects, if you wanted to add a gradient, you can add a gradient overlay and then it can end up looking pretty cool. Here it's going from like purple to blue. You can choose different like basic ones. You could choose different color schemes. Just see what they do. I kind of like the greenish one. Okay. And then when I get rid of the background, it'll still have the gradient over the top of her. So let's just do this with a very basic selection. So whoop. There she is. A very long shadow that I'm not selecting. Okay, and then maybe select and mask, just to review again how you refine your edge. You can feather it. You can shift it in or out. Make it tighter. And then click OK. And then let's mask out everything outside of that selection. So now here she is. Command T. Make her fit our scene here. She's kind of in the shadow, so maybe we put her up here. Oops. And then I might drag her down a layer. Come on. I want her right there, but I want her underneath. Let's see, underneath this one. Nope. Underneath that one. There we go. Oh. Command Z. She disappeared. Okay, Command T. Maybe make her a little smaller, and then she's obviously doesn't really blend in with the lighting that we have going there. So we could add maybe a lighter blending mode. So under normal, make it lighter. Maybe she's a hologram. That's kind of an impossibility that you could play with for your surrealism. You can also make 2 layers. So copy it by dragging it down to the little plus sign, and then maybe make this one normal. So you can see now where they overlap, it's lightening them. It's helping the background a little bit. Okay, so those are some effects that you can add in order to create a surreal picture, composite image from multiple images. I'm obviously missing some parts over here, and maybe I'll add a few more robots of different colors to create my whole effect. And I got my little plant down here even, so paying attention to details. Okay, thanks so much, and happy Photoshopping.